Okay. All right. So today, the agenda for our meeting is we're just welcome you all. Hope you all are doing well. I want to just say thank you for joining today. I appreciate your time. Um, I'll just open up the floor for any questions once everybody's kind of streamed in here this afternoon. Um, the second thing on the agenda for today will be the preliminary draft. We'll talk about that annotated bibliography that you've hopefully had a chance to work on up to this point. If not, you have some time, so you should be okay depending on your schedule, obviously. And kind of the research process paragraph. It's going to answer a couple of questions. I just want to get a sense of how you're doing, what steps you're taking in the research process, and if there's any internal or external factors that might be impacting your success on the essay assignment. Next, I wanted to talk about the assignment details, just some suggestions that I have for you as you're writing the paper, some things that I commonly see, um, minor errors and stuff that you can just avoid, and just to kind of reiterate some of the important components of writing an essay in the discipline of history. We'll take a break after we do that, either before or after we do that, depending on how the discussion goes. And then we'll just wrap it up. If anybody has any questions, we'll open the floor again and we'll conclude. All right. So first, does anybody want to ask any questions that pertain to the class? If you have something that's like specific to your assignment or a question about your assignment that might not pertain to the class, let's go ahead and meet after class, and I'll talk to you directly about that. But if there's any kind of more general questions that I can answer, or anybody wants to share anything before we get started, that would be awesome. All right, so we'll go ahead and move forward. And if you have questions as I'm presenting this information, please type in the chat or raise your hand or unmute yourself. I'm going to ask you to share just some information in the chat. That seems to be like the easiest and kind of most active way for us to participate. We have other ways we can do that. You can annotate on here. You can raise your hand, do some other things. But the chat seemed to be pretty successful in my meeting yesterday. So hopefully today as well, you all will be able to participate. Okay, so if you recall in the history prompt, there's 4 steps, I believe, that I had. The first was your essay topic. You've already submitted that. Some of you, I might have had some questions or some feedback about. And before I begin the discussion on the preliminary draft, is there anybody that needs help with an essay topic that hasn't decided on the topic or is considering changing your topic? If so, go ahead and answer in the chat and let us know, and we can talk about some options for you. I know some classmates have run into some hurdles and might have to kind of switch gears or go a different route regarding their topic.
If we didn't have any comments posted on our topic, like if we just got the points for it, does that mean that you basically it's fine?
Yeah, that's basically a thumbs up. I still might go back in and just maybe check in with you to see how the research process is going and see if you had to kind of either focus in on a specific detail of your topic or if you had to broaden the discussion. But yeah, if you have the points and you're good to go, and then if I left you any comments, you can reply to me. The only I'd say there's 2 major themes like regarding the topics. The first is if you were choosing a topic outside of our time period, which is we're ending at roughly Reconstruction, so we're saying like the 1870s, 1880s is permissible, and then anything after that we're moving into History 101. So it can still be done. I would just ask that you check in with me, if that was the case. There were a couple of instances where I had students who had selected topics, probably more so in my Mexican American Studies class. But I gave them the green light. I was like, that's a permissible topic. It's something that is there's going to be a lot of information on. And so the other trend I noticed is either probably essay topics that were a little too broad in scope. So think about, you have 5 to 7 pages. You want to talk about the essay topic in detail. You want to provide the broader kind of macro view, but also you'll fill that in with the micro view, the details, the data, the dates, the stats, like, how many, when you're talking about, as an example, let's see, we'll just say westward expansion as a theme. When the settlers came from what would be at that time be the east coast of the United States to the west, they came in droves. Okay, so then my question as I'm reading that essay would be, where did they come to? How many came? If you can provide some of those details and stats, approximately 25,000 settlers relocated to what would be present day Kansas City, something along those lines. So the better you can do that, the more developed your assignment will be. So those are just a couple of the trends that I saw with the essay topics. And if you think that might, apply to your topic and you have a question, just let me know.
Professor?
Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
All right, so do you have an example of the preliminary draft, or like how you exactly want it done? Or
I don't have an example of the paragraph that you're going to write, but I do have some questions and I want to share those with you. I do have the examples of the annotated bibliography. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but I don't have an example of the research process paragraph. If you like, I could draft something up and then send it out just to give you like an idea of kind of what I'm looking for.
please, can you do that, please?
Yeah, you got it. Let me write myself a note real quick before I move on to something else.
And one more question. Sorry about that.
Sure, no problem.
And so for the preliminary draft submission, is this supposed to be a paragraph, like one solid paragraph, or is it supposed to be like a whole paper type?
It's just going to be, I think you can answer it in a paragraph, but if you need to type a little bit more, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't want to like add on additional work for you. It's more kind of trying to get a sense of, so I'll just give you a audio example of like, if you were asking me and if I was just responding, I'll give you kind of a quick example. So one of the first questions is, how has the research process been going? And so like, as an example, you might say, the research process has been going well. I've been able to use the history guides to find articles and primary sources. The challenges that I faced include trying to find time with my busy schedule, trying to find space at home, because I don't have my own room. That might be like an external factor that might be impacting your success on the essay and in the class. And then I think I asked, where do you want to focus on? So like maybe the third sentence might be, I'm not comfortable with citations yet, but I've began kind of researching a little bit about how to cite in the paper, and that's the area I want to focus on. And then to conclude, if there was anything else you wanted to share, to say, I feel like I'm on pace, I feel like I'm on schedule, or I feel like I'm behind a little bit. Can we meet, via Zoom, personally, during office hours? So it's kind of has to do with the essay, but then it also is kind of asking, what are the things outside your control that are impacting your ability to write the essay and do the research. And I know a lot of people we've known for this past year, like there's a whole bunch of things that are impacting everybody's success. So it's just kind of like a check-in and just a well-being check.
Thank you.
No problem. And I'll share the Reginald, I'll share the questions with you and with the class as well. And so maybe hopefully you'll get a better idea. And then I'll be glad to draft something up and probably send it out sometime tomorrow.
Thank you.
You got it. Any other questions I can answer for the class? All right, so I'm gonna go back to the preliminary draft. So it's the, and I apologize for people coming in because I know the Zoom meeting said 1:30. When I scheduled the meeting on Zoom on my PC, it doesn't let me adjust the time for some reason, only on the mobile, so I didn't get to update it. But so if you're coming in at 1:30, maybe that's the reason, and I apologize because we did start at 1:20 today. But we're recording the video. If there's anything that you missed and you want to check out, you can. I'll upload it for you tomorrow, and you can get updated.
Thank you.
You got it. Going back to the preliminary draft, that's kind of where we're at right now, talking about the annotated bibliography and this other written kind of statement that I've asked the class to produce. I just finished talking a little bit about that right now, but we'll revisit that because I know a number of you just joined us, and that's something important for the class. So I just wanted to ask everybody, what is the difference between the annotated bibliography that you've been asked to produce and the works cited page? And if you kind of have an idea of what the difference is, why don't you share with us in the chat what you think the difference is between the works cited page and the annotated bibliography?
I think the difference is the annotated bibliography is that in that you put how it works for your essay. How influence your essay and instead the cited page is about just the information where you take the information.
Yeah, the difference between these two are with the annotated bibliography, it's going to be similar to a bibliography, but you're annotating each source. So below each source, you're going to tell me how that source is useful in your essay, and just some kind of minor details about the source. Is it, something you found? Where did you find it at? Or what is the usefulness of the source? That's correct. Thank you, Diana. And then the other question I have here, which is something that we were just chatting about, I mentioned we'll come back to it. What is the second part of the preliminary draft? This research paragraph or this blurb that I mentioned, and we'll come back and revisit that in more detail in just a moment, because I know that's something important, and I didn't really explain in great detail what that involved. So I know we want to keep everybody filled in on what that involves. Okay, so what is the difference between these two documents? We just mentioned the annotated bibliography would have annotations below each source. Another key difference would be that generally you would produce the annotated bibliography at the beginning of the research process versus the end. The works cited is something that you put at the end of your essay. The annotated bibliography would be produced in the beginning stages of the research process. That's kind of the gist of the difference between these two documents. And I just want to stress that you'll want to take a look at the examples that are in the history essay module. I would hate for somebody to submit just like a works cited page, because you're not going to get full credit on the assignment because it's missing those annotations. That's the whole goal of producing the annotated bibliography. One more question for the class. How many sources do you need for this annotated bibliography?
4, right?
Yeah, it's 4 sources. You have one in your possession, right? You have the secondary source, which is our textbook. And then in addition to that, you can locate another secondary source. And then for primary sources, depending on your topic, we've looked at some, we've utilized those in the discussions. You guys have analyzed the primary sources, both in the group setting, and then more recently with discussion 3, you used the 6 C's worksheet, to kind of delve a little deeper into the significance of the source, the meaning, the kind of broader context, and how it connects to what you've read and what you've learned to this point. So yeah, I think if you can find those useful primary sources, and it's not set in stone, you are welcome to change this list so your annotated bib doesn't have to match your final works cited. There's going to be hopefully some additions, maybe some subtractions for whatever reason as you move forward. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say like the terminology bibliography versus works cited. Works cited would list only sources you've used, and bibliography would list all sources you've read, even if you didn't use them. I think it's something along those lines. I can't recall. Maybe somebody has a better understanding of that. But basically one lists sources you've only cited in the paper, and the other would list any source that you've read in preparation for the essay.
The way that I was thinking about it was that the annotated bibliography was basically the outline for your works cited page. And then the works cited would be the final version of your annotated bibliography minus anything extra. So it's just going to have the important.
Exactly. That's one great way to look at it. And the benefit of formatting your sources right now will help you. You can just basically delete those annotations, like you mentioned, Drake, that you would then translate that to your works cited page. So that's a great example. And would it be useful for us to look at the examples that I posted? The student examples, did you all get a chance to look at those yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I think I looked at them. We had a discussion where we kind of had to use them, didn't we? Or maybe I looked at them in reference to something else.
I don't think we use them in discussion as of yet, but we'll just look at it real quickly at the end of the Zoom session today, because I think that you might have also noticed, like I kind of prefaced it by saying like these aren't 100% perfect examples, but I think they're good representations of what your final should look like. There's some minor errors, and I think I asked the class, like, did you spot any minor errors? So that was, kind of the details regarding those examples, but it was really just spelling and a little bit of formatting that was the main kind of areas to improve. But overall, I thought they did a good job trying to explain in their own words how those sources fit for their essay.
Yes, I want to say that the examples that you gave about annotated biography was very good, because when I read the first one, I didn't understand what was it. But then when I saw the second one and the third one, I understand that how it works, because
Okay.
the three ones are different. So that have three different examples of that give me a better view how to do mine.
Yeah, that's what I know that's helpful with the examples. I'm trying to make sure I have, just like Reginald had asked earlier, providing those examples for kind of any assignment that you're going to submit. And some I have examples from past work, some I'll create my own and just say this would be like a kind of something to model your assignment after.
Thank you for that.
No problem. All right, so this is the research process paragraph, and this is what we were talking about earlier. And these are the questions that I have listed on the link for you to submit the assignment. I just posted that before our meeting today, and so I'll show you that as well before we leave. But you can start thinking about these questions, and they're on our Canvas page, so you don't have to write them down. And you can copy them from there if you like, or you can write them down if you prefer. It's really just providing a snapshot, like where you're at right now. What have you accomplished up to this point? How are you feeling about the process? Because we're doing it in steps, we're doing it in stages. So it's checking in to see how things are going up to this point. What are the challenges that you're facing? I mentioned there might be internal factors where you don't have a bunch of experience writing, or you need some help with citations, or grammar, punctuation, etc., organization. Or it could be external factors. It could be that, like I'll give you an example here, my office is in my bedroom, so sometimes I'm not able to use it as often as I'd like, or it's hard to keep the area quiet, to find quiet space to study. I notice we have a number of classmates that are using their cell phones to do work. So your experience navigating Canvas is different than if you were using your PC. And if that's the case for you, if you rely more on your cell phone, and if you see there's anything that you'd like me to change or that can help you navigate, let me know, because I'm often using it on the computer, and therefore it's difficult for me sometimes to see, to experience it via the mobile app. I do use it for communicating, sending messages, and it gives me notifications, but I'm generally on my laptop. Number 3, what area do you plan to focus, improve on? And for each one of these, if you type a sentence, that's fine. You're going to get the points. That's not, not as concerned about the content, like, so to speak, just more that you're actually being able to answer the questions. And is there anything else you'd like to share? Do you want to meet up, or do you want to see if other students might want to participate in like a Google Doc to share ideas, or possibly to meet in Google Hangout or Zoom or something like that? We can facilitate that and figure out a way that might be helpful, because we're only meeting every other week. So sometimes maybe you want to exchange ideas with someone. So just thinking about those collaborative opportunities, and there's nothing required, but maybe that will help you. Yes, Diana?
Yes, Professor, I have a question. The research process paragraph is, we have to, do we have to send to you that paragraph?
Yeah. So the preliminary draft is basically the annotated bib plus this. That's what makes up the preliminary draft. You can either paste it in your annotated bib at the end or before, or you can post it when you submit the file. There should be an option when you upload the file, like additional comments, like a little box there. You can either type it there or in the document.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And if you have any trouble with that, just message me, and I'll be glad to help you figure it out. Drake.
So it's more of a general question. It just kind of crossed my mind, like a couple different ways that I could actually approach my essay. Does it need to be like without a bias type perspective, or can we write it from like a persuasive standpoint, or like do you just want the facts, or can we kind of like make an opinion based on the facts and try to push that with the essay?
Oh, that's a great question, because the way I framed the prompt is more you're kind of providing an explanation. You're providing a narrative, more like a story, and telling me, that's what you're asked to do. But you're more than welcome to approach it from the persuasive perspective with a kind of an argument in your thesis, a stance that you're taking. Just, I would ensure that as you're doing that, use the evidence that you find to support some of your claims in the essay. Let's just use like an extreme example. This is just for example purposes, but if I say American expansionism, westward expansion was the best thing that ever happened to Native Americans, and then if I just go on and continue my discussion without elaborating, as the reader, I'm not going to agree or disagree with you on that point, but I am going to ask you then to support that. Why do you believe that was the best thing that ever happened? What does the evidence say? What do the authors say? Well, there's going to be material out there that will argue that point, and to say progress, industrialism, capitalism, development, urbanization, those things were achieved via westward expansion. Therefore, we improved the quality of life. There's going to be scholars that argue that. Now, on the flip side of that, there's going to be scholars that argue against that. So I would just ask that if you do use a more persuasive tone, then just try your best to consider how you're supporting your discussion. Because I don't think it's necessarily wrong, and even we're all coming into it with some kind of bias. We're all coming into it with our own worldview, but if there's no evidence to support the claims that we're making, then it's easier to challenge that. It's easier for someone to knock that down. And then going beyond that, as I mentioned, then it can be more problematic depending on the validity of the sources you're using. If I'm just using someone's opinion on a blog, obviously that's more problematic. But yeah, you're welcome to take a stance. And as I mentioned, it could be something I personally agree with or don't agree with, but I'm not grading you based off of whether I agree or disagree. I'm grading you based off of the analysis and connections that you're making with the sources that you've encountered and how you're organizing that, putting that together, and providing a coherent and cohesive discussion. So that's kind of the basis of how I'm approaching your essay. Any other questions? I know I just kind of went on a little ramble there about the essay, but if anybody has any other questions, those are some great questions, and I think that was helpful for everyone to think about those questions.
Yes, I have another question.
Sure.
I read about we have the possibility in the finals to present a test or do a presentation about our essay.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be sure about if I understood well, because I'm planning to make a presentation about my essay instead of having a test.
Yeah, that's correct. You have, I believe I gave you guys the option gave the class the option to do a presentation in lieu of taking any test. So that is and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the prompt, I kind of spelled out the few options that are established. And if there's something else that you thought of outside of that, you could actually pitch that to me and then we could work something out. But I think it was like a narrated PowerPoint presentation, a video presentation, or a podcast presentation, which would be just like an audio recording. So yes, you do have that option. Yeah, you do have that option. And if you're considering the option, I mean, that's something to think about right now so that you can prepare and set yourself up for completing that at the end of the class.
But the presentation is in real life or is already recorded to send to you?
It's going to be recorded. It's going to be recorded. If you do, like, say, if you do a video, you're probably going to have to upload it on YouTube. Or if you're able to file transfer, that's fine. You can do that too. Whatever works. But yeah, it would be recorded, and you can do it in one take if you like to do that, or you can edit it. There's options you have for like video editing software. I don't want you to spend a whole bunch of hours trying to create the perfect video, but you have some different options for that. And then for the PowerPoint, I think there should be an option for audio recording that you can record over the PowerPoint. So just let me know if you like need some software. I know there's some free tools out there that you can use to create a shorter video.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I just wanted to go over the next portion is kind of just some suggestions that I mentioned earlier, some areas that you can look at. And then there was just a question in the chat I just wanted to answer. The 5 C's can be a helpful tool to make annotations. I think it can be helpful to make annotations using the 5 C's because you can translate some of that to the annotation. That it's kind of, summarizing and talking about the context. You'll probably have to expand beyond that because you're going to say how you might plan to use it in the essay. If I'm talking about the Civil War and I find a primary source, one way that I might explain that is to say, well, this primary source gives me a firsthand account, a real life experience of participating in the Civil War battle of Antietam, for instance. But yeah, I think that's definitely a good option, a good start if you're trying to just figure out the best way to annotate. But you're going to have to probably, in addition to that, you'll have to add your own answer to some of the questions for the annotations. if I'll just preface this next presentation part. If you have like a lot of experience writing essays, especially at the college level, you're probably familiar with a number of these suggestions. But I think it's just helpful overall. The areas to focus on are really big. It really boils down to your sources and your discussion, your voice in the essay. Is it clear? Can I understand what you're saying? Is it organized well? Are you able to transition from point A to point B to point C? We're using that traditional kind of intro, body, conclusion, because I think that's, you know, what we're generally producing for essays. And there's other formats and alternatives, but so I suggest to use your sources adequately. That will include using references, using citations, and highlighting the material that you've planned to use, and then properly using those sources. Did you format correctly? Did you provide a balance between your voice, your own ideas, analysis, and discussion, and that of the sources? And I think that's one of the most challenging areas as a writer, is to try to, especially if you're not in the discipline of history, you're not maybe used to using these sources in that manner, is how can I then translate that to use my own language, but also support that via utilization of the sources. And then the last thing for properly using those sources would be your works cited page. And I wanted to share just a couple of resources with the class that I think can be helpful. So how do I adequately give credit to the sources I'm using? Well, when you're referencing something, I mean, what would be, tell me in the chat what your understanding of the difference between a reference and a citation is. What does the class understand relating to what the difference between a reference and a citation is, if you're familiar with those two terms?
I mean, just from like context, I think reference would be when you like paraphrase or like kind of take some information and change it around, but it's still an original idea that belongs to someone else. And then when you actually like cite something, or I don't even remember. Yeah, when you're actually citing something, it's like a direct. It's not really any part of your construction. It's like almost identical to what came from someone else's brain.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Those definitions. And for the references, generally we're saying it can include a paraphrase. You're taking the idea that's presented, but you're rewording it in your own language and trying to make sense of it. In some cases, it may be simply just saying, according to, as stated by, it noted, the author X notes that X, Y, and Z. So we're just providing an identification point so that the reader knows, okay, this is what that source is saying. It's not what the writer is saying. It's not what Reginald or Adrian is saying. It's actually from that source. Yeah, and then for the citation example, we're talking about direct quotes. That's what I think Drake was referring to. And in a direct quote, you wouldn't change any of the language, but you would use quotation marks, and you would use parentheses in MLA format with the author's last name and the page number where you found that source, so that if I have the question, I can actually trace that and say, okay, on page 91, author Meyer says this, and oh, it matches, everything looks correct. I will add that for the direct quotes and citations, an instructor's suggestion would be, don't over rely on them. If it's something you can reword and you can easily reword that, then don't direct quote it. Don't make 75% of your essay direct quotes, because then it appears that you were just simply taking from the source versus trying to analyze and make connections and summarize some of the data. If there's statistics, if there's dates, locations, years, numbers, then that's a good opportunity to directly quote. And for longer quotations that are longer than like 2 lines of or a couple sentences or 2 lines in your essay, Those are called block quotes. Does anyone have familiarity with citing block quotes? And type a yes or no in the chat.
A little bit.
A little bit. Perfect. So there's some familiarity there. The block quotes will be indented differently than your regular quotes. And I'll share with you an example. We'll take a look at a quick example in one of these resources that I have coming up here. Let's see. Let me just share these resources real quick. We'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll take a closer look at the resources. We'll visit the link for the preliminary draft submission, and we'll just kind of look forward to what else is coming up this week, and so on and so forth. So let me just share these links real quick, and then we'll take a break, about a 7-minute break or so. We'll break at 2, and then we'll come back around like 2:07, 2:08, or make it 2:10. It's all good. Whatever you guys like. Okay, this is just kind of, I skipped ahead in my discussion, but this slide is kind of referencing those differences and the points that I was making. So what we'll go over when we come back from the break is we'll just take a quick look at the library guide. I know we did that with the librarian previously, but just in case there's anybody that didn't get a chance to look at it, or just to point out a couple of areas that are of interest. Who has heard of the OWL Purdue website? That's a great website thank you. That's a great website for thank you, Everett, as well, for your citation guide, basically. And then the last one I think is going to be helpful, is it's applicable to history and more generally just to writing. So let's go ahead and break. We'll come back at 2:10 if that's cool with you guys. And then we'll take a look at these resources, visit the Canvas page, our Canvas page, and then just wrap up for the day. All right. See you guys in about 10 minutes. Thank you. think we still technically have like 1 more minute. Oh, there you go. We're about 10 minutes. 2:10 right now. So let's take a look at the research guide produced by our SWC library. And I wanted to, let me turn this off real quick. Sorry, y'all. Here we go.
They're that color because you have them hyperlinked.
Yeah,
I was wondering why. I was looking at it and it was making my eyes feel weird.
I know it's really bright. I'm sorry. I saw that and I was like, should I change it to white? But it was hyperlinked. So I know it thinks it's almost like 3D or something. Yeah, everybody that was here the day of the librarian presentation, this is the guide that we went over. But if anybody that was not with us that day, I just wanted to show you a good option for the research process. And the one I like the best, this is in the beginning stages here just to get ideas, but I think the era or geography is super helpful. And for our course, you will be looking at US history before 1877. That's like basically aligned with History 100. But you can also go to California history. I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody's doing any like Mesoamerica work in our class, but for the Mexican American Studies class, the Mexico history is a big part of that. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you real quickly. And that link is available on in the history essay module. There's a header that says research guides, and I'll show you that when we visit our Canvas page. But let me go back to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to reshare in just a moment. Let me see if I can get to these other resources. Okay, the online writing lab by Purdue is like really a go-to site for not only for our class, but for any class that you're doing any written work in. This is something that's linked, I think, even via our Southwestern College library. It has a lot of information, so navigating, can be a little tricky sometimes, but on this left-hand side, you can get an idea of, some general information. Probably the most important area would be the research and citation. So we're doing MLA style.
The screen that we see is still the PowerPoint. It's not showing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. There we go. Awesome. Now it's Purdue, correct? Okay, cool. Thank you. This was the initial area I was mentioning. And then if you go to research and citation, MLA style, I think most of you are using MLA style. Is anyone not using MLA style?
Is it okay to use APA format?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely okay to use APA format. And then, of course, if you're going to do APA, then you can use the APA guide here. I just leave it open. I know most people are, even in my own experience at community college, MLA was like the go-to format. It's really not going to change unless you're a psych major or something related to that, or for like the discipline of history. Then once you go on to do your upper division classes, you'll get more into footnotes or endnotes, which is another way in which we cite. But for purposes of our class and for the essay, MLA style is the way to go. Let's see, formatting style and guide. Let's see if it has formatting quotations. And then this, just real briefly, this is what I was mentioning earlier, those block quotations. Say you encounter like a paragraph and you're like, this is just spot on. This is going to be perfect for the essay. I want to use it. The way in which you cite that paragraph is different. You're basically kind of, you're indenting to identify to the reader that this is all one connected continuous quote. And I mentioned it's a block quote, but they're saying it's long quotation here. It's going to be indented 1/2 inch from the left margin. And yeah, check out this example if you're planning to do any block quotes. That will help you, make sure you don't miss any points if you incorrectly format it. And then the last one I wanted to share with you guys is the Iowa writing guide produced by the History Teaching and Writing Center. I think this is a good resource because it kind of aligns with what we're doing in regards, and there's a style and citation guide as well, but writing guide, you guys are in the classes in the getting started, or moving along, I should say. But once you get closer to the final submission of your essay, you can use, for instance, this final checklist. There's a couple of other important links. So if you have an opportunity, go ahead and navigate, poke around, see what you can find on this guide. This is also in the history essay module as well. So we'll go to our Canvas page right now and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. But I think, for instance, on this final checklist, it asks a lot of questions that I would ask as well as I'm reading your paper. Does it respond to the assignment? Does it address what I've asked you to do in the prompt? Does it have a thesis statement? Does it express the main idea? Is it too narrow? Is it too broad? Just to add to those suggestions that I provided earlier, one other thing you can avoid is giving me the backstory. So say you're going to do your assignment on the American Revolution. Avoid spending the first 2 pages talking about the 50 years prior to the revolution. Go ahead and just delve right in and tell me what the topic is, what the focus is. Are you talking about the battles? Are you talking about the experience of the colonists? Are you talking about the experience from the crown or the British perspective? Delve right into your topic. Avoid providing a big long backstory, because that takes away time and space for you to talk about the topic, and therefore it minimizes your ability to adequately and successfully meet the requirements of the prompt. Is the paper well organized? Does it have an introduction? Does it have a body, a conclusion? Does it flow? I mean, can I understand it? If you were to just basically recite your essay to me, would it sound clear and would it make sense? Like if you're in front of me or on Zoom and reading your essay to me, talking to me as I'm talking to you, would it make sense, or would it be confusing to the listener, to the reader? Are you including transitions from point A to point B? Those sentences help you move from paragraph to paragraph. Is the tone appropriate to the assignment? Is it expressive? Does it show that you have had the time and ability to really dig into the sources, or is it very general and not very specific? And that's one area, or that's one approach that you should avoid, obviously, because you want to display your mastery of the subject. And I'm not expecting you to know everything about this topic, but reflect what you've learned in the class and in the utilization of the sources. Did you spell check it? Did you cite correctly? A few errors, grammar errors, spelling errors aren't going to drop your grade from like a A+ to a B-. But if it's continual, and in addition, if it makes it difficult for me to understand, then it's going to cause a loss of some points. Does it end with a strong conclusion? Does it relate to your thesis? Do I have any loose ends? Does it feel finished? Did you wrap up right at the end and didn't really kind of wrap back around and reiterate your points? So give yourself some time for a conclusion, and make sure you carve some time out to adequately draft that conclusion. So it says grammar, punctuation, and other sentence level concerns are very important to any history essay. Before you turn in your paper, be sure that you do not have any mechanical errors. One great option is an online writing lab here at Southwestern College. You can actually upload your essay, and I believe during normal time, it used to be 48 hours, 48 business hours, they would get back to you with some feedback. Has anybody used the online writing lab here at Southwestern College?
I did once actually.
How was your experience with it? Was it
Uh,
helpful or?
it was really helpful actually because it was for a writing class and it was about like job majors and like experiences. And like they pointed out like what specific things I should really be focusing on and like how some of my writing was really unnecessary and like it wasn't really needed. So it allowed me and like I did actually score like an A on it afterwards
Oh, awesome.
after I figured out everything else.
Thanks for sharing, Jeremy. I appreciate it. That's a great tool. I mean, I highly suggest that everybody at least just submit your paper so you can have another set of eyes read the paper. That really helps because we get bogged down. We kind of like dive in, and as Jeremy mentioned, there might be instances in which we're writing, we're maybe drifting off topic or presenting information that doesn't really help us explain the topic in a more detailed manner. So I'll send you some information on the online writing lab. Obviously, double check, and if it's the day before the assignments due, you can't expect much, but at least maybe a week before or a couple weeks before you submit your rough draft or your final, take advantage, and hopefully they have help. I know there's probably going to be a lot more work now that everybody's doing everything online, but thanks for sharing about your experience. Okay, so just to wrap that discussion up, are there any questions about the resources, the instructor suggestions? And I'm gonna piggyback onto, I don't even think that's the right word. I'm gonna go back to the research process statement right now. We're gonna visit that before we wrap things up today. Okay. So let's take a look at the student view. This is what you're gonna see here. And I just want to make sure you're able to see what I'm seeing because sometimes I'll publish something and it doesn't show up the same way on my end. Okay, so I'll keep adding to this history essay module. Just, take a look at it every once in a while and see. I'll generally like mention to the class, but if there's something you missed, I have the history guide here. I have the history teaching and writing center guide that we were just looking at right now. And for the preliminary draft, just to finalize that discussion, you'll click here and then you have unlimited attempts. So if you need to submit something else. So these are the questions that I mentioned earlier. Answer these questions in a paragraph or more, basically is what I'm asking you to do. And then combine that with your annotated bibliography. You have two options for submitting that part. You can either insert it into your annotated bib, or here where it says comments, you can copy and paste it here. Hi, Professor. How's it going? Of course, you're going to provide more detail there. All right. So can I answer any questions about the preliminary draft? When is it due? I have it due here by Sunday. If you need a day or whatever, an extra day or two, no worries. I won't mark it late. I just want to give you all the opportunity to get the assignment submitted. If anything beyond that, please message me. Let's talk, let's chat, let's discuss the situation, and we'll work something out.
Thank you.
All right. So if there's no questions about what we covered in the Zoom meeting, I'll just conclude by saying the module for this week will be up probably sometime tonight. I'll send out an announcement. If you need to speak with me on a one-on-one basis, please let me know right now and stick around. If not, I just want to say thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for your time today. And yeah, you guys have a great day.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor. Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
You too. Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Thanks.